The rust-colored moons hung low over Kepler 742 b's horizon as Dr. Sarah Chen pressed her hand against the ancient wall, feeling its subtle vibration beneath her fingertips. The structure stretched for kilometers across the barren landscape, its dark surface absorbing light in a way that seemed to defy physics. After 3 months of excavation, they'd barely scratched the surface of understanding what they'd found. Another dead end. Captain Rodriguez's voice crackled through her helmet comm. The security officer stood several meters back, his posture betraying his boredom despite the environmental suit. "No," Sarah replied, her eyes fixed on the patterns that seemed to shift beneath the wall's surface. "It's alive. The whole thing is alive." The Galactic Confederation survey ship in orbit had dismissed their findings as primitive remnants of a long-dead civilization. The Confederation's chief archaeologist, Vedrix, had been particularly condescending during their last transmission. "Humans," he'd said, his multiple eye stalks wobbling with amusement, always trying to find significance in simple things. But Sarah knew better. The energy readings from the structure were too precise, too ordered to be random decay. The patterns in the wall reminded her of neural pathways, but on a massive scale. Dr. Chen, the excited voice of her assistant, Kai Patel, broke through her thoughts. "You need to see this. We've found an entrance." Sarah hurried across the excavation site, her boots leaving tracks in the red dust. The entrance was little more than a seam in the otherwise seamless wall, but it pulsed with a faint blue light that seemed to respond to their presence. "The energy signatures just spiked," Kai reported, his hands dancing across his tablet. "It's like it knows we're here." Before Sarah could respond, a message from the orbiting Confederation vessel interrupted. "Human research team." Vedrix's smug voice filled their comms. "We've completed our analysis. The structure is confirmed to be nothing more than a primitive defensive installation, likely abandoned for at least 50,000 years. We're classifying it as a Level 3 archaeological site. No significant technological value." Sarah bit back her frustration. The Confederation, with their supposedly advanced scanning technology, had spent all of 15 minutes examining the structure before reaching their conclusion. "With respect, Ambassador Vedrix, we'd like to continue our investigation. There's something here that—" Yes, Vedrix interrupted. "Continue your quaint research. The Confederation grants permission, though I cannot imagine what you hope to find that our superior technology hasn't already determined." As if in response to his words, the seam in the wall widened slightly, revealing glimpses of crystalline corridors beyond. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. The interior layout was impossibly complex, like looking into a living geode. "Captain," she called to Rodriguez, "we're going in." The team made their way carefully through the opening. The crystalline corridors seemed to respond to their presence, subtle lights tracking their movement. Sarah's instruments recorded energy signatures unlike anything in known space. "This architecture," Kai whispered, "it's not just advanced, it's intelligent." They reached what appeared to be a central chamber. The walls here were covered in shifting patterns that reminded Sarah of computer code, but far more complex. As she approached a central pedestal, the patterns began to coalesce, forming what looked like a neural interface. "Dr. Chen," Rodriguez warned, "maybe we should wait for proper clearance before." Sarah reached out and touched the interface. The chamber exploded with light. Holographic displays materialized around them, showing star maps, defense grids, and what appeared to be tactical information. But it was the message that appeared before them that made Sarah's heart race. "Guardian Defense Network. Human in URAL PTERN DTECTED. Initiating QM Peta Bela TV scan." "By the stars," Kai breathed. "It's not just a defensive installation. It's part of something bigger, something that's been waiting." Above them, on the Confederation vessel, alarms began to sound. Vedrix's voice, now tinged with concern, came through their comms. "Human research team, We're detecting massive energy surges from the structure. Cease all activities immediately." But it was too late. The Guardian Defense Network was awakening, and it had recognized something in human neural patterns that the Confederation, for all their supposed superiority, had missed completely. As the chamber hummed with growing power, Sarah realized they'd stumbled upon something that would change the balance of power in the galaxy. The only question was, were they ready for what came next? The final display message confirmed her suspicions. Human QOM peta bela TV so NFIRMD. Guardian Network Actitigation Sequence INITIA HED. Warning. Level 5 Threat DETCTED in nearby space. Sarah looked at her team, then back at the readouts. Something was coming. Something that the ancient builders had prepared for. And somehow, humanity had just inherited their legacy. "Veterx," she transmitted to the increasingly panicked Confederation vessel, "you might want to revise your classification. This isn't a level 3 site anymore." The chamber's lights pulsed in agreement, and deep beneath the planet's surface, ancient machinery began to wake from its long slumber. The humans hadn't just found a relic. They'd found humanity's invitation to a much larger stage, and the galaxy would never be the same. The Guardian chamber pulsed with increasingly urgent patterns as Sarah studied the holographic displays. Each passing moment revealed new layers of complexity in the ancient defense system. Behind her, Captain Rodriguez coordinated with their orbital support while Kai frantically logged data. Multiple vessels just emerged from hyperspace at the system's edge. Rodriguez reported, his voice tight. "Configuration unknown. They're not responding to Confederation hails." The chamber's displays shifted, showing tactical projections that made Sarah's blood run cold. The approaching fleet was massive, hundreds of ships moving in perfect formation. The Guardian Network's threat assessment scrolled across her vision. Harvesters DTCTD, Extinction Level 38, activating Fabulal Defensive Turoto Civils. Above them, the Confederation ship's response was predictably bureaucratic. "Attention unknown vessels," Veterx's voice echoed through the command channel. "This system is under Confederation protection. Your presence here violates 16 separate treaties." The response came in the form of weapons fire. The Confederation ship's shields flared briefly before failing, and Veterx's smug superiority dissolved into panic. "Emergency. We are under attack. The unknown vessels have weapons that bypass our defensive systems." Sarah watched as the Guardian Network's displays tracked the battle. The Confederation ship's supposedly advanced technology was being systematically dismantled by the Harvester fleet. But something else was happening too. The network was adapting, learning, analyzing the attacker's capabilities in real time. "The network," Kai said, his eyes wide as he interpreted the data. "It's not just a defensive system. It's a learning machine, designed to evolve and adapt to any threat. And it's been watching, waiting, gathering data for thousands of years." A new message flashed across the displays. "New URL interface. Required for fuel ACTIV. Human KNDADAT DETCTED. Proceed." Sarah stepped forward, but Rodriguez caught her arm. "Doctor, we don't know what that means. It could kill you." "If those ships reach Earth, death won't matter," she replied, breaking free of his grip. "The network chose humans for a reason. We have to trust that." The interface pedestal rose from the floor, its crystalline surface pulsing with invitation. Sarah placed her hand on it, and the world exploded into light and information. The network's consciousness merged with hers, thousands of years of accumulated knowledge flooding her mind. She saw the truth then. The Harvesters were ancient enemies, moving from galaxy to galaxy, consuming all advanced civilizations they encountered. The network's creators had fought them to a standstill, but at a terrible cost. Rather than continue the fight, they'd seeded defensive systems throughout the galaxy, waiting for species with the right neural plasticity to inherit their legacy. The Confederation's rigid, hierarchical minds couldn't interface with the technology. But humans, with their adaptability and capacity for lateral thinking, were perfect candidates. Above, the Confederation ship was retreating, its hull scored by harvester weapons. Vedrix's voice had lost all pretense of superiority. "Human research team, you must evacuate immediately. These entities, their technology is beyond anything we've encountered." Sarah smiled, though no one could see it through her helmet. "No, Ambassador. Their technology isn't beyond us. It's exactly what we've been preparing for, even if we didn't know it." Through her neural link, Sarah felt the Guardian network extending its influence. Hidden installations across the planet were awakening, responding to her thoughts. The entire world was transforming into a defensive platform that the ancient builders had designed but never fully implemented. "Dr. Chen." Kai's voice seemed distant now. "Your neural patterns. They're synchronizing with the network at a quantum level. This is unprecedented." The Harvester fleet was approaching the planet now, their ships moving to attack positions. But Sarah wasn't afraid anymore. Through the network, she could see the full scope of their defensive capabilities, and more importantly, she understood why humans had been chosen. "The network doesn't just want a user," she explained, her voice resonating with new authority. "It wants a partner." The builders knew that defeating the Harvesters would require more than just advanced technology. It would need creativity, adaptability, and most importantly, the human capacity to find solutions where none seemed to exist. The chamber shuddered as the first Harvester weapons struck the planet's atmosphere. But deep beneath the surface, something vast was stirring. The network had spent 50,000 years preparing for this moment, gathering energy, refining its systems, waiting for the right species to complete its purpose. "Ambassador Vedrix," Sarah transmitted, her thoughts now seamlessly integrated with the network's communication systems. "You might want to move your ship to a safe distance. We're about to demonstrate why analyzing something for 15 minutes isn't quite the same as understanding it." The planet's surface began to shift, ancient machinery rising from depths that had concealed them for millennia. The Harvesters' initial attack faltered as their sensors detected energy readings that exceeded their tactical projections. Sarah felt the power building around them, the network responding to her thoughts with an eagerness that suggested it had waited far too long for this moment. Humanity's first real test against a galactic threat was about to begin, and thanks to their inheritance from the ancient builders, they were far from defenseless. "Let's show them," she whispered, both to her team and to the network itself, what happens when you underestimate humanity's potential. The planet's response would reshape the galaxy's understanding of both human capability and the true nature of the legacy they'd discovered. The time for dismissive analysis was over. The era of human guardianship was about to begin. The first Harvester strike hit like a thunderbolt, but the Guardian network's shields held. Through her neural link, Sarah felt the attack as if it were striking her own body, yet there was no pain, only information, flowing and adapting in real time. "Multiple capital ships entering low orbit," Rodriguez reported, his military training keeping his voice steady despite the apocalyptic scene unfolding above them. "Their energy signatures are off the charts." But Sarah was already aware of this, seeing the battlefield from 1,000 different angles simultaneously. The network's sensors painted a complete picture of the invasion force. 947 ships, each carrying enough firepower to glass a continent. Under normal circumstances, it would have been a hopeless situation. These were not normal circumstances. "The network is showing me their attack patterns," Sarah said, her consciousness expanding through the ancient defense grid. "They're beautiful, in a way, like a dance, but there's something wrong with their formation." Kai looked up from his readings. "Wrong. They're tearing through space like nothing I've ever seen." "Exactly," Sarah smiled. "They're too perfect, too rigid. They fight like machines following optimal combat algorithms. No creativity, no adaptation. Through the neural link, she felt the network's agreement. The harvesters were powerful, but predictable. High above, the Confederation ship struggled to maintain its position at the system's edge. Vedrix's voice crackled through their comms, a mixture of terror and fascination. Impossible. Their weapons. They're using gravitational distortion fields. Nothing should be able to resist that kind of assault. Nothing they've encountered before, Sarah corrected. The network was feeding her its history now, showing her why its creators had chosen to wait for a species like humanity. The Harvester's technology was devastating, but it had a critical weakness. It relied entirely on predictable, mathematically perfect patterns of attack. "Watch," she whispered, and reached out through the network. The planet's surface erupted, not with weapons or shields, but with something far more subtle. Quantum field generators, hidden for millennia, began emitting patterns that seemed random but contained an underlying order that only human intuition, merged with the network's processing power, could fully utilize. The first wave of harvester ships suddenly found their perfect formation disrupted by gravitational eddies they couldn't predict. Their weapons, calibrated for mathematical precision, began missing targets by microscopic but crucial margins. "My God," Kai breathed, watching the data stream across his tablets. "You're not just fighting them. You're introducing chaos theory into their battlefield calculations." Sarah nodded, feeling the network's satisfaction as it implemented her instinctive understanding of unpredictability. The Harvester's greatest strength, their computational perfection, was becoming their weakness. "Their entire civilization is built on predictable patterns," she explained, directing the network to expand its disruption field. "They've optimized themselves so completely that they've lost the ability to handle genuine randomness. And humans, we thrive on chaos." Rodriguez finished, a note of pride in his voice. The Harvester fleet's formation was breaking down now, their ships struggling to compensate for conditions that defied their fundamental understanding of spacetime. Through the network, Sarah introduced more variables: gravitational waves that pulsed with the rhythm of human heartbeats, quantum fluctuations that followed patterns from Earth's weather systems. Vedrix's voice returned, filled with disbelief. "The energy readings, they don't make sense. How are you generating these effects?" "We're not generating them," Sarah replied, feeling the network's power flow through her consciousness. "We're conducting them, like a symphony of chaos, played through instruments that have waited 50,000 years for the right musicians." The Harvesters launched a second wave of attacks, but their weapons couldn't lock onto targets that refused to follow logical patterns. The Guardian Network's defenses, guided by human intuition, moved with an organic fluidity that their rigid algorithms couldn't predict. "They're pulling back," Rodriguez announced, checking his tactical displays, regrouping at the system's edge. But Sarah knew this was just the beginning. Through the network, she could sense the Harvester's confusion turning to something like fear. They'd encountered an enemy that didn't fight according to their rules, and for the first time in their long history of conquest, they didn't know what to do next. "The network is showing me something else," she said, her voice distant as she processed new information. "These defenses, they're not just on this planet. They're scattered throughout the galaxy, waiting to be awakened, waiting for humans to find them." Kai's eyes widened as he understood the implications. "You mean this was all a test, to see if we could handle the technology?" "Not just handle it," Sarah corrected, feeling the network's ancient wisdom flowing through her mind. "To see if we could improve it." The builders knew that defeating the Harvesters would require more than just advanced technology. It would need a species that could introduce true unpredictability into the equation. A species that could look at perfect, logical patterns and say, "Let's try something different." The Harvester fleet hung at the system's edge, their perfect formations now showing signs of disorder. For the first time, they faced an enemy that didn't fight like machines, didn't follow predictable patterns, and most importantly, didn't fear their technological superiority. Through the neural link, Sarah felt the network's excitement. Humanity hadn't just inherited a defensive system. They'd been chosen to introduce a new way of thinking into a galaxy that had become too predictable for its own good. Ambassador Vedrix, she transmitted, knowing that the Confederation needed to understand what was happening. You once dismissed human research as primitive. Would you care to revise that assessment? The response was a long time coming, and when it did, Vedrix's voice had lost all trace of its former condescension. Perhaps we have much to learn from human unpredictability. Sarah smiled, feeling the network pulse with approval. The real battle was just beginning, but for the first time, the galaxy was starting to understand why humanity had been chosen as its guardians. The Harvester fleet's retreat had lasted precisely 17 minutes before they began their third assault. This time, their formation was different. They'd abandoned their perfect geometric patterns in an attempt to mimic the unpredictability that had proven so effective against them. Sarah watched through the network's countless sensors and smiled. They're trying to adapt, she said, but they're doing it mathematically. Still following rules, just more complex ones. Through her neural link, she could feel the network's almost playful response. The ancient defense system had waited millennia for this moment, and now, merged with human intuition, it was finally showing its true potential. Multiple targeting solutions, Rodriguez reported, his tactical displays lighting up with new data. They're using some kind of cascading attack pattern. Each ship's movement influences the others in ways our computers can't predict. They don't need to, Sarah replied. Stop trying to calculate their patterns and feel them instead. She reached out through the network, letting her human instincts guide its responses. The quantum field generators shifted their output, no longer trying to counter specific attacks, but instead creating a fluid, ever-changing defensive environment that responded to her intuitive understanding of the battle. Kai's voice was filled with wonder as he monitored the energy readings. It's like jazz improvisation, but with gravitational fields and quantum states. The harvesters throw out a pattern, and you respond with something that shouldn't work but somehow does. Above them, the harvester fleet's new strategy began to fall apart. Their attempts at unpredictability, still bound by algorithmic constraints, couldn't match the genuine randomness of human-guided responses. Ships that had conquered countless civilizations found themselves trapped in gravitational eddies that moved like ocean currents, guided by Sarah's memories of surfing Earth's waves. Vedrix, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly broke in over the comms. We're detecting massive energy buildups within the planet's crust. What are you doing? Something they won't expect, Sarah answered, feeling the network's power gathering around them. Captain Rodriguez, get everyone to the central chamber. Now. As the team hurried to comply, the Guardian network began its transformation. The entire installation shuddered as ancient machinery, dormant for 50,000 years, awakened to its true purpose. The planet's surface itself began to shift, revealing structures that defied conventional engineering. By all the stars, Vedrix whispered, his sensors capturing the impossible scene. The planet. It's becoming a ship. Not just a ship, Sarah thought as she guided the transformation. The network was revealing its ultimate form, a planetary defense system that could adapt and move as needed, powered by the core of the world itself. The builders hadn't just created a fortress. They'd created a mobile fortress that could think and evolve. Warning, Rodriguez called out. The harvesters are launching their entire reserve fleet. Over 2,000 ships incoming. Sarah felt no fear. Through the network, she could sense something the harvesters couldn't. The joy of genuine creation, of improvisation, of doing something simply because it hadn't been done before. The builders had understood this would be humanity's greatest weapon against an enemy that had forgotten how to truly innovate. Let me show you, she said, both to her team and to the watching Confederation, why the builders chose us. The transformed planet responded to her thoughts, quantum fields extending in patterns inspired by Earth's natural phenomena. Hurricanes, forest fires, the chaotic dance of butterflies. Each movement of their defenses followed not logic, but the profound unpredictability of life itself. Harvester ships, designed to fight enemies that followed rational strategies, found themselves caught in defensive patterns based on the flow of river rapids and the spread of wildflowers. Their weapons, calibrated for mathematical precision, couldn't lock onto targets that moved with organic randomness. Impossible, Vedrix breathed, watching as the mighty harvester fleet was systematically dismantled by defenses they couldn't comprehend. Your strategies violate every principle of advanced warfare. That's exactly the point, Kai replied, understanding dawning in his voice. The builders didn't choose us because we were advanced. They chose us because we never forgot how to play. Through the network, Sarah guided their transformed world through space, its movements following patterns from childhood games and half-remembered dreams. The Harvesters' rigid military discipline crumbled in the face of strategies that followed no logic but the fundamental unpredictability of human nature. "They're breaking formation," Rodriguez reported, unable to keep the amazement from his voice. "Multiple ships attempting emergency jumps. Their coordination is completely shattered." Sarah felt the network's satisfaction as the Harvester fleet began its full retreat. They had faced an enemy that didn't fight like machines, didn't follow their rules, and had turned their own perfect logic against them. But more importantly, they had encountered something their vast experience hadn't prepared them for: the terrible beauty of genuine chaos, guided by human creativity. "Send a message to the Confederation Council," she transmitted to Vedrix's ship. "Tell them humanity is ready to take our place as guardians of the galaxy. And tell them to prepare, because we're about to rewrite every rule they think they know about warfare, technology, and the true nature of advancement." The network pulsed with approval, its ancient wisdom now forever merged with humanity's boundless creativity. The galaxy was about to change, and the laughter of those who had dismissed human potential was about to turn to wonder. 2 weeks after the battle, Sarah stood before the Confederation Council, the Guardian Network's neural link a constant presence in her mind. The vast chamber, filled with representatives from 1,000 worlds, had fallen into stunned silence as they reviewed the battle footage. "Impossible," the Grand Minister of the Confederation whispered, all 6 of his eyes fixed on the holographic display. The Harvesters had never been defeated in their 50,000-year history. Their computational superiority was absolute. "That was their weakness," Sarah replied, feeling the network's quiet amusement. "They forgot that the universe isn't a math problem to be solved. Sometimes, the most effective solution is the one that makes the least sense." Vedrix, now serving as humanity's advocate before the council, stepped forward. His earlier condescension had been replaced by something approaching awe. The human crew didn't just drive off the Harvester fleet. They fundamentally changed how we understand combat in space. Their defensive patterns, they followed Earth weather systems, music rhythms, even children's games. The council chamber's displays showed scenes from the battle, quantum fields moving like ocean waves, defensive grids that spiraled like DNA helixes, attack patterns based on the flight paths of hummingbirds. The Harvesters' perfect formations had shattered against defenses they couldn't predict because they couldn't understand the human concepts behind them. "The builders of the Guardian Network," Sarah explained, "didn't just leave us a weapon. They left us a partnership. They knew that defeating the Harvesters would require more than advanced technology. It would need a species that had retained its connection to chaos, to creativity, to the fundamental unpredictability of life itself." Kai, standing beside her, activated a new hologram showing the network's full scope. "We've identified similar installations on 17 other worlds so far, each one waiting for human neural patterns to activate them. The builders created a defensive grid that spans the galaxy, but they made it incomplete." Incomplete. The Grand Minister's antenna twitched in confusion. "They left room for improvement," Sarah smiled. "Room for human innovation. The network doesn't just accept our guidance. It learns from it. Every random pattern we introduce, every creative solution we devise, becomes part of its growing consciousness." The council chamber erupted in discussion, thousands of alien voices debating the implications. Some were frightened, others excited, but none could deny the reality before them. Humanity had proven itself far more than the primitive species they'd once dismissed. Rodriguez, now promoted to commander of Earth's first Guardian fleet, stepped forward. We've already begun training more human operators. The network responds differently to each of us, learning from our individual creativity. No two human-guided systems fight exactly alike. And the harvesters, a council member asked, retreated beyond the galaxy's edge. Sarah replied, but they'll be back. They have to. We've shown them something they've never encountered before, a defense they can't calculate, can't predict, can't overcome with pure computational power. Vedrix raised all four hands for silence. The Confederation must acknowledge what we've witnessed. Humanity doesn't just deserve a place among the advanced species of our galaxy. They may be the most advanced of us all, in ways we never understood. Through the network, Sarah felt the truth of his words. The Builders had seen something in humanity that the Confederation had missed. The power of retained chaos, of refusing to let technological advancement strip away their connection to the random beauty of existence. We offer humanity full membership in the Confederation, the Grand Minister announced, with all rights and privileges thereof. Additionally, we formally recognize Earth as the center of the galaxy's new defense initiative. Sarah shook her head. Earth is just the beginning. The network is showing me its true purpose now. Those other installations aren't just defensive positions. They're seeds. Each one will grow differently under human guidance, creating a defense grid as unique and unpredictable as humanity itself. The council chamber's displays shifted, showing the galaxies sprinkled with points of light. Each one a guardian installation waiting to be awakened. But between those points, new patterns were forming. Connections that even the Builders hadn't anticipated. The harvesters thought they had perfected warfare, Sarah said, feeling the network's excitement at the possibilities ahead. They forgot that perfection is just another kind of prison. Humanity never forgot how to break free of patterns, how to embrace chaos, how to dance with uncertainty. That's not our weakness. It's our greatest strength. As if in response to her words, the network sent new information flooding through their neural link. Sarah gasped as she understood what she was seeing. The Builders, they left us more than weapons. They left us a roadmap to possibilities they could imagine but never achieve. They were too ordered, too logical to make the leap. But we can. What kind of possibilities? Vedrix asked, his scientific curiosity overwhelming his diplomatic reserve. Sarah smiled, feeling the network's ancient wisdom merging with humanity's boundless potential. The kind that will change everything. The Builders created the network as a defense system, but under human guidance, it's becoming something more. Something new. Something that even they couldn't predict. The council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity hadn't just inherited a defensive network. They'd been chosen to guide the galaxy's evolution in directions that more advanced but less creative species could never have imagined. The age of perfect calculation is over, Sarah announced, her voice carrying the weight of both human determination and the network's ancient power. The age of beautiful chaos has begun. Above them, the stars seemed to shine a little brighter, as if acknowledging that the galaxy's story was about to take an unexpected turn. The harvesters would return, other threats would emerge, but they would face a humanity that had finally understood its greatest strength, the power to see patterns and choose to break them, to embrace chaos and forge it into something new. The laughter of those who had dismissed humanity's potential had been silenced. The time of underestimation was over. The era of human creativity unleashed upon the galaxy had begun.